I Shall Return, The Strategic Power of Hope in History. Introduction. When words become weapons, history often remembers weapons, battles, and treaties. But occasionally, it remembers words, not as empty rhetoric, but as forces capable of shaping the course of nations. Among such phrases, few are as stark and as enduring as General Douglas MacArthur's vow in 1942, "I shall return." At first glance, these three words might appear as nothing more than a personal promise. Yet in context, they became more than that. They crystallized a strategy, ignited morale, and mobilized a whole people's capacity to endure. MacArthur's declaration to the Filipino people and to his own defeated soldiers is a unique case in the philosophy of history. It demonstrates that hope itself can function as a form of weaponry, subtle, invisible, but decisive. This essay will examine MacArthur's vow through multiple lenses: historical, psychological, and philosophical. By situating his words in the context of learned helplessness and learned optimism, we can explore how human beings, individually and collectively, resist despair when confronted with overwhelming odds. Ultimately, we will see that positive thinking is not mere naive wishfulness. Rather, it is a resource as tangible and necessary as food or ammunition, capable of sustaining human endurance until material reinforcements arrive. Next part: the historical backdrop. The fall of the Philippines. The year was 1942. The Pacific War had begun with catastrophic suddenness for the United States. Pearl Harbor lay smoldering, and within months, Japan's armies had swept through Southeast Asia with breathtaking speed. The Philippines, then an American protectorate, became one of the central battlegrounds. Despite fierce resistance, American and Filipino forces could not withstand the Japanese onslaught. Bataan fell. Corregidor, the island fortress at the mouth of Manila Bay, soon followed. Disease, starvation, and relentless bombardment broke the defenders. Tens of thousands of soldiers were captured, subjected to the infamous Bataan Death March. For General Douglas MacArthur, commander of U.S. forces in the Far East, the defeat was humiliating. Ordered by President Roosevelt to evacuate, MacArthur left the Philippines under cover of night in March 1942. For the soldiers he left behind, it must have seemed like abandonment. For the people of the Philippines, it was the darkest hour. The promise before departing, MacArthur made a declaration that would echo across oceans: "I shall return." This was no detailed battle plan, no map of operations. It was a bare fragment of language, yet it carried extraordinary psychological weight. For those who heard it, it became a talisman, a prophecy, a fragile lifeline against despair. Next part: words as conditions of an experiment. To understand the function of MacArthur's vow, we can borrow a metaphor from psychology: the experimental paradigm of learned helplessness and its reversal. The laboratory of despair. In the 1960s, Martin Seligman's experiments on dogs demonstrated how creatures exposed to uncontrollable pain ceased trying to escape, even when escape later became possible. This phenomenon, learned helplessness, revealed how the perception of control is more decisive than objective conditions. A being convinced that nothing it does matters will surrender, even to avoidable suffering. Similarly, the people of the Philippines in 1942 faced overwhelming evidence of helplessness. Their defenders had been crushed. The enemy occupied their land. They were starved, terrorized, stripped of sovereignty. Objectively, they had no reason to believe that resistance would alter their fate. The rational conclusion was despair, the modified experiment. Yet history shows that despair did not fully take hold. Instead, the Filipino resistance movement, the Hukbalahap guerrillas and other partisan groups, continued to fight. Why? Because MacArthur's words had transformed the psychological equation. His vow functioned like the modified experiment in which the subject receives a signal: escape is possible, salvation is coming. Just as animals fight longer when they have experienced prior rescue, so too did Filipino fighters persist because they carried in their minds the expectation of eventual deliverance. Thus, MacArthur had effectively created a condition of the experiment at the macro level of history. His words substituted for the signal of hope. They prevented the descent into learned helplessness. Next part, the neuroscience of collective hope. Dopamine. As anticipation neuroscience teaches us that dopamine is not the chemical of pleasure but of anticipation. It spikes not when we receive a reward, but when we expect one. This anticipation drives action, sustains effort, fuels resilience. MacArthur's vow created precisely this anticipatory framework. The Filipino resistance, though cut off from food and weapons, experienced a sustained dopaminergic mobilization on a societal scale. Each raid, each act of sabotage, was sustained by the mental picture of MacArthur's return. Prefrontal maps of the future. The prefrontal cortex allows humans to construct detailed models of future scenarios. For partisans, "I shall return" was not vague rhetoric. It allowed them to imagine a future in which their sacrifice had meaning. This cognitive mapping turned survival into a bridge to liberation. Memory and fear. Of course, fear dominated daily life. The Japanese occupation was brutal. Yet memory, particularly collective memory of MacArthur's promise, counteracted fear. Communities whispered the vow as reassurance. Hope became a shared mnemonic structure binding them to endurance. Next part, the philosophy of positive thinking. Between illusion and strategy. Positive thinking is often criticized as illusion, a refusal to confront reality. But MacArthur's vow illustrates that positive thinking, when strategically anchored, is neither naive nor false. It does not deny suffering. It reorients suffering within a teleological frame. To say, "I shall return" in 1942 was audacious. There was no guarantee of return. But the value of the statement was not its empirical truth at that moment. Its value was performative. It produced the conditions of its own possibility by sustaining resistance until return became militarily feasible. Meaning as resistance. Here we see a convergence with Viktor Frankl's insights from the camps. Survival is less about brute force and more about meaning orientation. For the Filipinos, meaning was not abstract but embodied in a narrative. The Americans will return. We are part of that plan. Thus, hope became a weapon of war. Next part, the return and its triumph. In October 1944, MacArthur waded ashore at Leyte, fulfilling his promise. The event was immortalized in photographs and broadcasts. For many Filipinos, it was the embodiment of prophecy, the vindication of years of sacrifice. Militarily, the return was part of a larger Allied offensive. Psychologically, it was the consummation of hope. The promise had not only sustained resistance, it had also preserved the legitimacy of American leadership in the region. Hope had become a tool of geopolitics. The next part, hope as a strategic resource in history. MacArthur's story is not isolated. History offers many cases where hope functioned as a resource. Wartime Britain, 1940. Churchill's speeches sustained morale during the Blitz. Civil rights movement. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream mobilized collective action. Eastern Europe under communism, Havel and Solidarity thrived on the conviction that this system cannot last forever. In each case, hope was more than rhetoric. It was a neurocognitive mobilizer, aligning communities toward persistence. Next part, the weapon of hope. MacArthur's "I shall return" teaches us that positive thinking is not frivolous. It is, in the crucible of history, a weapon capable of sustaining collective survival. Like oxygen in a sealed vessel, hope does not alter the physical walls, but it allows those within to keep breathing until the walls collapse. From the perspective of psychology, neuroscience, and philosophy, the lesson is clear. Hope transforms helplessness into resistance, resistance into survival, survival into eventual victory. When MacArthur stepped ashore in Leyte, he proved not only a general's determination but also a universal truth, that words, when infused with hope, can be more powerful than guns. I truly hope these ideas will inspire you on your own path of discovery. If you know someone who would find this perspective valuable, please share this video with them. And to make sure you don't miss what's next, subscribe and join me for the upcoming videos.